Alrighty everybody, here we are. I didn't record an intro because I've lost my voice and it kind of like hurts and I can't actually physically record it. So I can only just talk normally. So for the rest of this video, I'm just going to record a normal video. Skip the intro. Now guys, if you do want to check out any of my private group where I post any of the trades, anything I do with my money, links are in the description. You guys can find anything that I also do on socials, Twitter, Telegram, things like that. All of that is linked in the description of this video. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was mainly mapping out our prior Bitcoin cycles, talking a little bit about the price structure that we saw from these prior cycles, and then just looking at what is playing out today, how are the time frames similar, and then what can we expect to play out moving forward from here over the next 3 months, because we're only 2 months away before our next Bitcoin halving. That's going to be about mid-April is when the Bitcoin halving is projected to be. So we're at a very interesting point in time where Bitcoin has already performed so well to begin this new cycle. It's kind of front run prior cycles as far as, its bear market bottomed relatively quicker than prior cycles. We actually bottomed over here in June. Bitcoin kind of consolidated here for 6 months before the FTX collapse, where we ended up seeing Bitcoin go for that final lower low. But we saw Ethereum hold its support. Its lowest low was in June. So it was a little bit different. We saw people that were a little bit quicker to buy into Bitcoin. Instead of an 84% correction, it was only like a 77% correction. So this cycle already has had a significant amount of buy support. So seeing us kind of breaking out in this quick way, it's not necessarily unexpected, just because with the approval of the ETF, with all of the rumors of the ETF leading into that approval, we really saw more people willing to buy into the market. We didn't see that the dips were nearly as volatile as maybe some of the prior cycles, and I think a lot of that has to do with the confidence inside of this market cycle versus years past. Now, coming even into our last cycle, the price structure was completely different, right? When we're looking at this entire cycle, it was basically just a big triangle type consolidation. Once we broke out, retested that as new support, that's where we saw that new all-time high. So the corrective cycle itself in the bear market, and then even into the beginning of the new bull market, it was a lot different versus what we saw right here. Considering to begin the cycle, we had the bear market, we made just this one big sort of flush leading into the final capitulation of, the FTX collapse. But a lot of altcoins never made a lower low, right? So it was mainly Bitcoin that did this big lower low, and it did a little bit of a difference from the rest of the market. But regardless of that scenario, what we still have ended up seeing was pretty consistent, higher highs and higher lows to begin this new uptrend. It wasn't anything like what we saw here in Bitcoin, before we had this big sort of corrective move and everything was just kind of back and forth throughout. We saw a much bigger breakout to the upside to begin the bull market. We had a shorter consolidation in the bear market than we had seen in prior cycles. All of it all the way through was pretty unique. So coming even all the way back down to the 2016-17 cycle, this is when I got into crypto. And it reminds me a lot of what we're seeing today, just because of the consistency of us building a new uptrend. It's a lot more like what we saw in that early cycle of 2016. The only difference is, like I say, this one is kind of front running a little bit. Notice how Bitcoin spent all of this time consolidating, and it was kind of all the way over at the end of that year before we started distancing ourselves from that trend line, right? That was when we started going parabolic. But it was all the way into spring before we ended up breaking out and going into a new all-time high, right? Where we're at right now, we spent all of that time consolidating on this trend line, but ever since the rumors of the ETF started, we kind of distanced ourselves from that. So the most bullish scenario is that we kind of spend more time building somewhat of a foundation of support, even if we do something like this, right? It doesn't have to be quite as corrective, because the only reason this happened was because China banned Bitcoin. So that was a fundamental reason for why Bitcoin actually dropped. But when we're watching Bitcoin today, assuming nothing like that happens, my guess is we might come up for one more high. And if we do see a correction, it might be something along the lines of this, where we come all the way back down to like that high to mid $37,000, $35,000 levels. That's kind of what I'd be watching for. That would be putting us right back into that same sort of range. We don't have to come all the way back down and retest that ascending support. We might end up bottoming up here a little bit higher. I don't know. We're going to have to just end up seeing what the market gives us. But regardless, if we see a correction, this is kind of what I would expect, where it just ends up being kind of probably the final correction we see. you know, the final opportunity that anybody has to jump back into the market at a good discount before that final move sets in where we do go into price discovery. Now, the good thing about that 2017 cycle and 2016 was the amount of time we spent consolidating, creating a new, you know, ascending support. It allowed us to have a much bigger parabolic cycle on the way back up. And I think that that's the most important thing when we're comparing the two cycles. We didn't have the same sort of foundation in our last cycle. It was a lot more of this triangle type consolidation where everything was just back and forth before we had this sort of breakout. So I do think that the dynamics are different because we have the ETF, because we have institutions, because we have to have retail for institutions to take profit. I do believe that if we see one more correction, that is just the last ditch effort that we can to get back in the market. If it doesn't go all the way back down to like 35, 37K, you know, maybe we come up to like 58 to 60K, and then from there we start this pullback. Maybe we only come back down to like 39, 40K before we start going back up. That would be a little bit more, you know, consistent with how we started to break out and distance ourselves from that trend in 2016. And I think that that would be a little bit more of the same sort of thing right here. And that's going to be following the same time frames, right? Because that's the big thing I'm paying attention for. The time frames. If we start breaking out of a new all-time high much quicker in pace than prior cycles, that shows that there's a difference in this cycle than anything else. It shows that this is actually a unique cycle, and we need to pay attention for those things. You know, from the point of us making a new all-time high in the last cycle, it was basically just under 1,100 days. And then if we come all the way back to the top of 2013, to the point of us making a new all-time high, it was over 1,200 days. So for us to already go into a new all-time high, you know, right now, you'd be looking at not even 900 days. For us to come back down and kind of correct for a short period of time, maybe we do that around the halving. I don't 100% know. But if we did come back down to correct, that's going to be still a little bit quick, you know, 900 days. But in my opinion, that's close enough that it's within the same ballpark, although it does definitely start to get into that territory where, hey, is this going to be an early cycle top? Where is this cycle going to break out much quicker? If we have a correction like this and we come back down to the trend line, or at least close to, I find it more likely that we're going to end up following our typical cycles. We'll follow the same time frames. However, if the market just starts front running right now, maybe we don't see a pullback. You know, maybe this thing runs up here to the all-time highs and then just kind of keeps going like this. If that ends up playing out, I would anticipate, you know, kind of an early cycle top to some extent. You know, I think that it would happen at a much quicker pace. We would probably run all the way up to 100,000 to 120, maybe even 150 relatively quickly. And all of that could actually happen within this year. We don't fully know what's going to happen with all of the ETF money, all of the institutional money that's coming into crypto. Is that going to be a catalyst that actually makes this cycle break out quicker than the prior ones? Or are we going to end up just seeing another sort of correction back down, you know, trap out all the late buyers before we do another one of these? That would be the most bullish scenario for me. You know, seeing us breaking out of a new all-time high mid to end this year, that to me would be a lot more, you know, symmetrical with the prior cycles. The last cycle broke out at the end of the year, and then it had the entirety of the following year to go into a new all-time high. So for us to break out, you know, in this year already, you know, spring, even into the summer of this year, it would be so much faster than any of the prior cycles that we have to remember that this is an outlier, that we have to pay attention that this thing is going to be unique. And because we followed these 4-year cycles up to this point, and we've always had these kind of 3-year bull runs, if we were to front run and start breaking out quicker, I believe that we wouldn't have a normal 3-year up, 1 year down. I think that it would lead to an early cycle top. So we have to just simply pay attention for this to be prepared for it. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about on today's video is going to be the Bitcoin dominance. The reason we talk about this is because when this thing drops and whenever this thing is going down, altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin. And this is always what we want to see as altcoin investors that are better positioned inside of a lot of these different projects. Now, when we're coming out here and looking at the long-term graph of the Bitcoin dominance, we've always been in a downtrend. And this chart actually goes further back than what it has here. And it's even further back in a downtrend, you know, if you go all the way back in that history. But 2017 was a unique cycle where it was the first time where Bitcoin dominance fell into a new all-time low with significant bearish price discovery to follow, right? It dropped from 96% dominance all the way to like 35%. So it was a huge drop. And during that time, we saw the most profitable altcoin cycle. You could have bought basically anything and made 100 or 200x. And then if we're coming all the way back and looking at our last cycle, this was our last cycle, right? So, you know, a lot of people made a lot of money. You know, it was more niche. You had to be early to specific narratives. Otherwise, you didn't really make very much. But if you were early to good coins, they did do really well. But when we're looking at the comparison of 2017 versus 2020 and 2021, it's really not much of a comparison. So as it stands, we're currently sitting right here at that same descending resistance. I do think that this is going to be the first cycle since 2017 where we see this drop and actually end up falling to a new all-time low. You know, where we end up seeing another one of these like 2017 where everything just massively sells off. And I think that that's going to be where, you know, the real altcoin profit is going to be, is in this next cycle. If we were to see this drop all the way back down to a 20 to even a 10% dominance, I think that's the moment where we do end up seeing, you know, the most altcoin profit that we're ever going to see, because chances are it won't ever be lower than what we see at that point. So when I look at this, I think that the real opportunity is noticing that this is a long-term descending triangle. So if we do break down, it's going to show that this next cycle is most likely going to be the most profitable, considering it's a breakdown of all of this time, you know, all the way since 2018, right? We've spent all of this time accumulating for altcoins. Now, this is going to end up being the cycle where they finally break out of those accumulations. Dinosaur coins that haven't done anything, not all of them are going to end up, you know, running. I think that some of them are for sure dead from that 2017 cycle. But I think it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise how much money retail is able to prop up a lot of these projects. Old projects, people are going to be flooding in through Coinbase, and they're going to be buying a lot of this stuff. And so when I think big picture of the most profitable cycle, I do believe that it's this one. When I look at what's happening on the long-term graphs and the trends, so far we're breaking out a little bit quicker, but if we come back down and get a correction, I think that that puts us right on the same trajectory as the prior cycles. You know, if that was to happen, I do think that this is going to follow a normal bull run where this thing breaks down, goes all the way back down into a new all-time low, and that's where we're going to see the majority of altcoin profits really set in, is during that move. In the same way that it was the most profitable altcoin cycle in 2017, I think that 2024 and 2025 will be the same for this cycle as well. So guys, if you found value in this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to end up seeing how I'm investing my money, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up for my private group on my website. Once again, thank you guys so much for the support. I do appreciate it very much. Hopefully my voice is better tomorrow. Either way, I wanted to give you guys an update. So with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.